as I was reading this, I sort of got to thinking, I've held this belief for a long time now, but after reading the prologue and the first chapter of The Fellowship of the Ring, I have come to the conclusion that we all ought to be a little more like hobbits. Actually, probably not a little. We ought to be a lot more like hobbits. Because the hobbits have a great many virtues that I think far too many people these days lack. And, well, primarily it's the virtues of simple folk. Ordinariness. If the hobbits are meant to be paragons of anything, it is paragons of being ordinary. It's one of the first lines said about them is they love peace and quiet and good-tilled earth. They love to sit on the front porch and smoke a pipe. They love their food. They love their drink. They just love all the things that make life living for them. They don't really have worries. They don't really have too many fears. And they don't concern themselves with things outside of the Shire, or at least not anything past Breeland. And I don't know, there were just a lot of things that stood out to me going, you know what? Most people could use a little more of that. Not to say that they're utopian, by any means, or that, if we all just lived like hobbits, the entire world would be fixed, because Iluvatar knows that the hobbits have their own problems, and, well, we should never be relying on a utopian vision to try to solve our problems anyway.
True. And eventually in this podcast we'll get to, why some of those qualities aren't necessarily virtuous, or aren't necessarily virtuous all the time. But no, there is something to imitate there.
And I think most people, most people who are even mildly familiar with The Lord of the Rings are drawn, they're attracted at least in some way to Hobbit life. But then again, I think there are a great many people who vastly misinterpret Hobbit living, where they think that just means that you're constantly just eating and drinking all the time.
Yeah, it's not exactly that simple.
No, and the prologue of The Fellowship of the Ring illustrates as much. So if you have anything to add, go ahead, because this isn't meant to be a video essay of mine.
No. But, I would echo what you said. There's ways to interpret that well, right? That virtue of ordinariness, and there's ways to question that. I think if somebody was to question that, they might be like, well, what counts as ordinary? Well, ordinary is boring. Ordinary is just staying in the same place and doing the same stuff and not really having much of an adventure in your life, which we've talked about before in this podcast, like the adventure of life. That's very important. It doesn't seem like you're really focused on going out and accomplishing all of the great things in the world. It doesn't seem that you're concerned much about the outside world, and so there are things that you should be aware of that you aren't aware of. And so, wait, is ordinariness really a virtue? And some of that can be called into question, I think, but the larger point of ordinariness being a virtue holds up very well under scrutiny, I believe. Chesterton said that there is nothing more extraordinary in this world than an ordinary man, his ordinary wife, and their ordinary children. And we've said that before in this podcast, and I'm not done bringing up that line. Because
it deserves
so
to
much
be
of what
said.
we talk about and what we choose to talk about in this podcast and what we believe can be boiled into that statement.
Yes.
It turns out that being ordinary is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that when you're ordinary, you have fewer things that you're concerned with, and so the things that you are concerned with, you're going to be more concerned with and more invested in. There's going to be more of your heart and soul in them.
Mm-hmm.
And first and foremost, that should be yourself, right? I want to be the best version of myself. I want to work on myself throughout the day. Well, it's hard to do that if I'm trying to do 1,000 different things. If I'm worried about these 5 podcasts and what my crypto and investments are doing and how these sport teams are doing and, what's in the news here and what's in the news there, this TV show, all these different clubs that I'm a part of or all these Discord servers I'm a part of, and just eventually your attention can only be split across so many things and you still retain any sense of wait, how am I doing? This is why we have trouble sitting in silence these days. Not just these days. Other people have had that problem in the past too, but just you don't really know how to work on yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you would know how to work on yourself if you got out of your own way and spent the time. And ordinary living gives you that space, right? And it's not just about you, it's about your family. It's about your friends. It's about the people that are right around you that are actually within your sphere of influence. So I can choose to have a deeper friendship with somebody. And I can choose to make this part of my town a better place. Because I have time to care about it. Not even about whether I choose to care about it or not. I have the time to care about it because I've made the time. This part of my town, my church, my extended family, right? Whatever the case is. And also, in one of the last episodes, I forget which one, I talked about the romanticism of the ordinary. When you're simple and you have fewer things to do, you're going to find all those ordinary things that you do more interesting. You're going to find that they have a greater value to you than you did before. Again, you're going to be caring about them more, as we've said. So it just naturally flows from that. I think, even in today's crazy world, just one example of this, just one, is how a dad really cares about his lawn. He's got his work, he's got his job, he's got his hobbies, he's got his family to take care of, and all his different things. But, one thing that he can return to is, I got my lawn, and I got to mow it, and I want it to look good. I'm going to care about making my lawn look good. Whether I'm doing the same pattern of rows up and down, or I'm changing it up this week, I'm going the other way. Maybe I'm doing that weird thing where I just go in a circle all the way around and I spiral inward or something. Yeah, that works too. Whatever I've done, I want it to look good, and I want to sit back at the end and take pride in what I've done. That looks great. That is a hallmark of ordinary living. Or at least of some amount of ordinary living that you're doing. Right? Where you can look at something simple and mundane, like your lawn, and take pride in the fact that you did a good job. And this is what the Hobbits do. The Hobbits care about the orderliness of their work. What was that line that they love? They love peace and quiet and a good tilled earth. Yeah, they'd like to garden. They'd like to farm. They'd like it to look good. That's the sense I would get out of Hobbits. They would not be so pleased about a carefree field that's a mess. But no, they're going to care about how it looks, and they're going to care about what they produce.
Well, I think they would like a field of wildflowers if it's in its proper place.
Yes, agreed.
If it's out past the hilltop outside of town, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still going to make sure that all my cabbages are in nice little rows. I'm going to make sure that everything I have is mostly orderly, although we know that hobbit houses can often get very cluttered. Because every time you go to a birthday party, you receive a gift. So, what is the word that they use for those little things?
Things that they don't have any use for but are unwilling to give away, they're called mathams.
Mathams, yes. The things that have no use, but we don't want to get rid of. Everybody has mathams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we ought to actually call them that. I have a feeling that's a word that Tolkien just made up, unless it's just some British term.
It works. It's a good term.
The way it's emphasized in a book that's intended for a British audience, I feel like it's a made-up word. But it works. Yeah. Everybody's got mathams. Everybody's got a junk drawer. A matham is I don't want to throw that away, I might need it. It's that one very specific piece of wood, because at some point, I'm going to need that very specific piece of wood that will just absolutely save the day.
So in other words, you're sane. Even if somebody doesn't think you're sane when looking at why would you keep that piece of wood?
And I know exactly where it is, and I will know exactly where it is in 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But no, to your point about the field of wildflowers and the being in its right place and the cabbages being in its right place, yeah, they have a proper understanding of order. Which you get when you are a simple liver, and that's all you really have to care about.
Yes.
And what's funny is that is... I'll stop talking in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's funny that they are the the opposite of Sauron in that sense, because Sauron's primary vice is order. That's the way that he falls initially. This is deeper lore for people, is basically he cared too much about order.
It's a disordered desire for order.
Yeah. And so the hobbits have a more ordered desire for order, I would say.
Yeah. Which is why... Well, that's why Sauron wants to enslave everyone. And he wants to bend the entirety of Middle-earth to his will.
Mm-hmm.
So he can make it look the way he thinks it ought to look.
Whereas the hobbits, by and large, each family governs their own affairs, and they care more about making the soil and the cabbages bend to their will. Mm-hmm. And maybe leaving it at that.